types of key messaging in the terms of the strategy you can use to deliver a presentation. They're called inductive and deductive. And in the interest of following my own advice, I'm going to tell you straight away that I will recommend the inductive methodology. And there's a reason for that. As it says there in this pyramid, this triangle, it's the message that comes first. In other words, your proposal, your recommendation, whatever it is that you're suggesting at the end of your presentation, it is the key message that you say right at the beginning. Then, if you have time, or you don't run out of time, or whatever the situation might be, then you have the luxury of going through some more data. So the more interesting facts and the body of evidence, the data, the details in the middle of your presentation. And then if you've got even more time, of course, a luxury these days, you can give general information, the overview, the research sources, the context of what created the study and why you're coming to the proposal or recommendation in the first place. So that's the inductive methodology. The other one, as I suggested, is deductive. Now, there is a time and a place for a deductive methodology, but you pretty much have to guarantee that the audience are going to be there for the full session and that there are going to be no interruptions or people running off. But there is a place for this, although I do think it's rare these days, where you give your introductions, who you are, why you're there, you know, the teams that are involved, etc. Then you get into the presentation, the project overview, the general information, the statistics, as I say, the individuals or the teams involved, the data, the research, the analysis, and then you funnel it down. What's interesting about that? What conclusions were drawn? The facts, the evidence, and any more colorful details you might want to include. Then finally, at the end of the presentation, 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes into the presentation, right at the end, you give your proposal or recommendation. Now, is that wrong? No, I'm not suggesting it's wrong. But in today's day and age, is it the best methodology we can use when time is crunched, particularly when we're on a lot of Zoom calls, or even when we're back in the real world, when we're face-to-face with our own audience? My suggestion, as I said, using my own methodology, is the inductive method is best. In most cases, 9 times out of 10, in my experience, the inductive methodology is best. But there are places where you could use a deductive methodology, where you're getting all the information up front first, you're given all this data information, and deductive comes from the word deduce, where you can deduce how you finally got to your key message, recommendation, or proposal. Let's move on. So the point I've made with that is there is a risk that you run with the deductive methodology. If you've given all this lovely, colorful data, evidence, research, the teams involved, who you are, why you're so great, before you get to the key message or proposal, there definitely is a risk these days where people are either bored from all the information they hear and they're just coming at them in a very linear fashion, or they genuinely have to leave for whatever reason, especially if you're talking to or presented to very senior people. Senior people's diaries are always full. They sometimes even have people that manage their diaries, and they often pop in or are reminded to say, right, you know, John or Mary, you are due in another meeting. So they leave the meeting that you're in. They might have to catch a taxi or run to catch a plane. Then they will not understand or receive or listen to or hear your key message. Why? Because you've left it right till the end. And it's a shame, because then they might get that information secondhand, and it may not be with the same sort of rigor or strength that you would propose it in a meeting. So the deductive methodology works. It's rare that I see it these days, but you do run the risk of not giving yourself enough time to get to that message if somebody has to leave the meeting. Now, what if we combine those two triangles? So you had the normal triangle and then you had the inverted triangle. There is a way that you could do this if you have time. And that is what I call diamond communication. And it is a metaphor because it's, you know, it's a quality method of communication. It's also one that has a nice shape and possibly easy to remember. So you've got the same as before. Remember the inductive methodology, where you've got key message up front, then the information and fact and evidence, then the general information, the overview and the context, and then of course at the end, the key message again. So as you see from the green arrow, you have the opportunity to repeat or reinforce your recommendation, your proposal, whatever you're trying to, in inverted commas, sell them. You know, whether it's an idea or a proposal, recommendation, whatever it is you're selling, you've got two opportunities to give that message forward. At the beginning of the presentation, then all the information during the middle, and then again at the end where you summarize and recommend it again by reinforcing the initial recommendation. Now, of course, that's if you've got time. If you run out of time and you've given your key message up front already, then that's okay, because they've got your key message. So it's not the end of the world. And that's why, I'll just move this out of the way for you. And that's why if you do it in the inductive methodology with the key message first, it doesn't matter if you run out of time. They still have your key message or recommendation. And as I say, if they've got the luxury of time, they'll absorb the rest of the information through your presentation, which may be the facts and the data and the colorful information, the research, etc. And if they have to leave, then they'll walk away with your key message, whatever that might be. So in conclusion, that's why I would recommend, as I said at the beginning of this little presentation, the inductive methodology. So you definitely have your key message first, then your interesting facts and data, general information, research, and the context of your presentation. And if you look around in the media generally, you know, traditional media definitely, and even some social media, but certainly traditional media, the news, whether it's BBC, CNN, it doesn't actually matter which news channel, or the radio, they will always give you the headlines first, whatever the headlines are. And they may introduce 2 or 3 stories, then they'll go into the details of those 2 or 3 stories. And at the end, before the weather, guess what they do? They reinforce the headlines, which is exactly what I had in my diamond shape recommendation. So in any case, if you run out of time, use the inductive methodology. At least whoever your audience are, especially if there are senior people in the room, they'll get your key message, they'll understand your recommendation and proposal. And if you have to then send something in a report or an email later, they have the time to read it later if you need to send some supporting evidence or data. There you go, your 2 forms of messaging, inductive versus deductive. As I said, would always recommend the inductive methodology. So you've got your message first, then if you have time, you go through the data and the research, etc. And as I said, with the diamond shape, if you really do have the time, then go through the inductive methodology, give the research, and then reinforce it again at the bottom of that diamond with the message again. So key message first, key message last. If your audience have to run, or the key decision makers have to leave the meeting, if you use the inductive methodology, they will at least have got your key message, proposal, recommendation right from the beginning. And as I say, if you need to back it up later with an email, you can do that later. But at least when they leave the meeting, they will have whatever your key message is. So my name is Laith at impactskills in the UK. By all means, if you've got any questions or you've got any comments or you'd like to share this, please do. If it helps anybody you know, I'm delighted. So have a lovely day. Take care of yourselves. Thanks very much.